We're back again.
Sam, Alabama, Clemson. For starters, huge blowout wins, by the way.
Both games by 20 plus points.
But you know what they're going to watch on Monday night? The big game.
The big game.
Clemson's got the ball, Sam. Let's just go ahead and jump into it right now. Clemson has the ball. What are you looking at?
Well, the first thing, and I think the thing that's everyone who knows anything about college football, and this is going to be one of the keys, is Deshaun Watson versus the Saban, Kirby Smart style of defense. Watson, a running quarterback, traditionally what you think of as giving Alabama problems is running quarterback, spread, up-tempo offenses. This year, Alabama, even though they gave up 43 to Ole Miss, has been much better against that style of offense than they have in the past. Part has to do with their secondary being better than it has been in the last couple of years, really since the 2011 season. Part of it is defensive line and the front seven are probably a little bit more balanced and rounded than they were in the past as well. But I think that's the big thing everyone's going to look for. The next question is, if Watson's not making plays, who's going to be the other? Who's the other guy that stands up? Will it be Artavis Scott? Will it be Wayne Gallman? Leggett, Jordan Leggett? I mean, who's it going to be?
That's a good point. I think when I look at it, though, I think the question is going to be, if you're Clemson, how in the world, based on the last game Alabama had, how are you going to score in the first quarter and in the first half? Because I think you've got to score a touchdown in the first quarter. If Clemson wins this game, they will put 7 points in the box score minimum in the first quarter. I know that sounds foolish, but at the same time, I think that they've got to have the points early so that they know they can play. I think that sometimes what happens, and maybe you agree with this, the teams that get down so early to Alabama, do they just feel overwhelmed? I mean, because a 17-point lead against Alabama seems insurmountable.
It's how Alabama's set up to play. I mean, I know you and I have talked about this before. Alabama isn't a cobra; they're a python. Once they have you where they want you, it's just a slow, steady squeeze the life out of you kind of game. I mean, I can only think of two teams that have come back on Alabama since Nick Saban's second year. Ohio State last year and Auburn in 2010 in the Cam Newton game, which was obviously a huge comeback. The other games they've lost, they were down. Alabama was down early and trying to play from behind, which that's not them. Mm-hmm. They are, we're going to get up, and then you're going to do everything you can, but resistance is futile because eventually the clock's going to hit zero and we're still going to have a lead. They're not, all right, well, you can have your 2 touchdowns early because we're still going to score 50 points and it's not going to matter. That's not what Alabama does, especially not this year. Jake Coker played the best game of his career in the Cotton Bowl, but Jake Coker is not the guy you want leading your team from behind, really. Not the guy I want. I trust Jake Coker with a lead, but if I have to have, if I'm down with 12 minutes left in the game and it's like, all right, well, Coker, we need you to go like 8 for 8 for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns over the next 10 minutes or we're not going to win, that's not a position I want to be in. So, Levi, we've pretty much broken down the game from as many angles as we know how to break it down from. Let's go ahead and get in and let people know what we think is going to end up happening.
All right. Well, Sam, I'll go first. I'll take the lead on this. I have a feeling that Clemson is going to win this game. I think they're going to win 27-23. And I think that when I'm thinking about this game, I see it playing out in a way that most teams haven't been able to do against Alabama. I think that if they can get a touchdown early in the game to establish and make themselves feel like, okay, we can compete with these guys. Because that's the biggest thing you've got to be able to do. In this game, and Clemson's been an underdog to Oklahoma, who, they were better than. They've been about 20 points. And I think really probably the strongest thing that came out of that game for them was that in a game where they trailed at halftime, they came out and won by 20 points in the second half, 37-17. They gleaned more from their playoff game than Alabama did. And I think for Clemson, I think if you can make the big plays, which I think that they're going to be able to do, I think if you make enough big plays early in the game and you force some turnovers in the second half by putting pressure on Jake Coker, I think that you're going to come out on top in a game. And this is a team that people really haven't believed in, for most of the season, even though they're undefeated. And I think Dabo and this team have maybe a little bit something that maybe Alabama just doesn't have.
I definitely see your points, and I definitely think if Clemson's going to end up winning the game, that's what we're going to see is borne out. I think you're absolutely right if Clemson wins the game. However, I'm going to take Alabama. I have Alabama winning a similar score to yours, even though other team, obviously. I have 28-24 Alabama. And I think the point I was making about the field position earlier is what's really going to end up coming into play in that Clemson, I think, only has maybe 3 80-yard scoring drives in it, and then another one that maybe they saw and have to settle for a field goal, and it might end up being a difference in the game where Alabama gets a touchdown where Clemson trades a field goal for a touchdown and ends up costing them somewhere along the way. I also think that in the turnover battle, Alabama's a huge favorite to win the turnover battle, and I think it's such a pundit thing to say, win the turnover battle, you win the game. It's obviously not always true considering Clemson's -1 in turnover margin of the season, haven't lost yet. But I think Alabama's more likely to force a turnover than Clemson is, and I think Alabama's ability to create short fields better than Clemson is ultimately going to be the thing that gives them the edge and the boost to win the game, even if they don't cover the point spread.